Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode. All right, y'all. Today we do an episode with a couple of the fellas from Vox Scream. We've got Joe and we've got Mark. George was not able to make it this time because he was sick, but it was a pretty sick conversation. So here you go. One team that I've been thinking about noodling around with is Commandos. I've done one trial game so far, and I got stomped because I am just very not used to playing not elites. But I think if I didn't make a bunch of mistakes, I could. Commandos seem pretty fun.
Oh man, Mark Meyer, you can tell them how long I've been telling people in the community of be prepared when elites do eventually get their balance. If you are not readied up on other teams, you're gonna feel significantly worse at the game because of the way elites are right now. Particularly if you're playing War Covenant Legionnaire.
I think also everybody's just so hot on plant beacons. Everybody's really hot on taking champion and other seek and destroy tac ops into elites. And we've kind of been bemoaning this on the pod for a couple of weeks now. I think that's not secure. I think infiltration is a lot better than people give it credit for if your team is good at infiltration. And Commandos are a team that's good at infiltration. You just run around with the grot and gather surveillance.
That's true. Yeah. I've been playing elites pretty much since 21 launched.
Infiltration is specifically strong with a couple of teams, but not generically strong because wiretap is just hard to get. It's reasonably useful as a anti-position thing where you leave it on the ground. Your opponent wants to stay away from it, but then part of the issue is then now you still need to get points off of it, or you need to find some other way to score. And infiltration teams don't necessarily break the positional parity that dropping a wiretap provides, so that's kind of a moot point. And then implant is stuck on an even more strange place than implant was in last edition, where now you really don't want to kill people. You want to do the implant every turn, and having the implant every turn is the same as before, but now you really don't want to kill people. So now there's definitely more tension. So infiltration teams might be good, but the only way that's easy and smooth brain to play right now, which is kind of where everyone's at, because we're still fully digesting. Now we've had 3 months of Warp Coven being objectively one of the best teams just because they have the most abusive movement tricks. So infiltration might be good in the future, and I suspect it probably will be, but it probably could use a couple changes, or it's just you have to radically rethink how you set up your positioning. In Commandos, Mandrakes, particularly get to abuse infiltration because they have the easy smooth brain play of, I'm going to sit in your back line and take pictures of you, and you just can't interact with it. But once, I assume that at some point, if infiltration teams get too good, we'll get hit. So I wouldn't ultra rely on it. Luckily, it's an easy trick to learn.
Yeah, exactly. It's not particularly complex.
Yeah, it's predictable at that too. If you're playing infiltration, you're more likely than not playing gather surveillance, right? And you just counterplay it. You just don't let them get second floor advantage.
Counterplay. I think Mandrakes definitely provide the opportunity to anti-counterplay or counterplay, which is probably the most annoying thing, because Mandrakes can always go first, because the Dirge Maw can always set up against the person. So you need to have a model that is attempting to reposition onto the top right away. So it all comes down to, do you win the first dice roll? And for anyone who is deeply lost in this confusion, the reason why we're talking about this is because Mandrakes have both the Dirge Maw and a couple other operatives that can teleport. And if you have lost the first dice roll and your opponent sits a model on the Vulcus terrain, you're now not able to interact with that model. So the counterplay for that is to try to get a ladder up. But if your opponent sees the ladder, they know which models can do it. So then you have to take the reposition scouting option. And it's just a huge, huge mess. So luckily, you can stop the Commandos. You can't really stop the Mandrakes, because Mandrakes can use the Dirge Maw to go ahead of whichever model is going to move up there in your turn. So that's always rough.
See, why do any of that when you can just run up and kill a 14 wound Space Marine with a melta gun and just get 2 points for that?
That's true. Yeah, you could just play Rekkas and just smush people in melee. That's what I've been doing. I'll
Just
go up to a
crumple.
table, ask people how much explanation they want on a team, and see which level of spiel they want, which is definitely a thing that tournament players have to get good at, and also being able to give the spiel in like 3 minutes and have it be the goal when you're doing the spiel. For any consummate tournament player, is to try to make sure that your opponent you're getting a reaction from your opponent to see if you need to dig deeper or where you need to stall out on your explanation to go a little bit deeper. Because some players, I've done it. I went to a local tournament. There was a player on Crute. This is not me. This was like a local in our area. He like went up to the table, talked to the guy. The guy seemed like he was super confident. He's like, I don't need to hear about anything. Clustered up into a group of 4 Crute, got fire blasted on turn 1 against Legionary, and then just promptly picked up his models and walked away from the table and left the tournament. We're like, well, if you come off confident, like this, it kind of goes both ways. One of the most important things about being a medium or newer tournament player is when you go to those tables, you don't got to be hot shit, man. Like it's a hard game. If you're honest, your opponent will at least try to get you more on the same page. But if you go in very hot and you're like, I'm the best player, and you have only played, the 10 games and beat your 10 other locals, you might be in for a rough awakening at some of these larger tournaments. Because, you two just went to LVO, right? Or actually all 3 of you went to LVO. I was out.
So actually, Joe and I were not at LVO, but we are getting ready for some big tournaments here on the East Coast. I think, we're also the Cherokee Open in North Carolina. Excited to talk about that later. But also like Adepticon is something that's, in my side view mirror, and just generally getting ready for more competitive tournaments. Like I went to Nova as like my first big sort of regional tournament last year, and I had just so much fun with it. I'm really excited to do more of those kinds of events. But, I think I need to do a little bit more to prepare myself sort of mentally in terms of just like how I'm approaching the game, but also, in terms of just the more micro stuff, getting better with teams and getting better at 3rd edition overall. I know that Joe's hot on the hunt for a golden ticket this year, and I think you can do it.
Man, what's funny? ATC last year, there was only 10 players. And I was, I think, one Garrett family game away from getting my golden ticket. And that was in probably what I describe as probably a worse meta, where full power Felgorn, full power Cult meta. And man, that sniff of getting so close to it made me want to really make a run at it. And I'm really excited to try potentially a Cherokee. And then me and George both just signed up for Richmond as well in May, I believe. And we'll see. Now the question is, what team do I do that with is the solemn question. And does a data slate screw all of that up if it drops, I don't know, 2 days before Cherokee, right?
And okay, so real quick, when is the Cherokee tournament?
So the Cherokee Open is going to be 3 days. It is the 21st through 23rd of February. It is going to be at the Harrah's Casino Resort in Cherokee, North Carolina. I believe it's a $70 ticket, and that gets you into 3 days of Kill Team. It's going to be the narrative tournament, or the narrative day, on Friday, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Our friend Day has been writing all that up, and it sounds like it's going to be really fresh. Then we've got a 6-round grand tournament on Saturday and Sunday. And it is going to be North Carolina's first golden ticket event, so all of our locals are super excited. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be fun on a bun.
And just for like history's sake, when we did the Triangle Open last year at Atomic, and that was just in the Triangle area, which is kind of the most like populous region in the state. I mean, we got like 40 people. Even we got the whole Garrett family to come out and stuff like that, and that was not a golden ticket event. So we're really hoping that with this plus the added incentive of the golden ticket, we'll hopefully hit, I believe, the 60-person cap that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Head TO will be part of Vox Scream, right?
Yes, the George, also known as Strom, will be doing head TO, and me and Mark will be both playing. And I assume you're doing narrative, Mark.
I think I'm going to play some. I think what I want to do is I've never been to a casino before, so I'm trying to go up on Thursday a little bit early and kind of see the sights, hang out with the homies, maybe play like some casual Commander or something, and then really just dig into 3 days of Kill Team after that.
Yeah, which by the way, like it's all in the casino, so like either the hotel rooms, all of that. So it is going to get quite wild after hours, I imagine. So if for no other reason, come for that. I'm also planning on cosplaying, so that'll also be fun.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Are we going to get a spoiler, or are people going to have to be there to know what you're going to dress up?
Dude, I got so many ideas in my head. I mean, the core idea of dressing up as a grot, a chubby little grot, would be so funny to me as playing Rekkas. Dressing up as like a serf, either chaos or loyalist, in both ways would be good. My loyalist, Angels of Death is Dark Angels. So obviously, Lionel Johnson's back, so it'd be timely to do that. And then my Legionary is Fallen Angels. So dressing up as like Luther or something, that'd be also fun. But we'll see.
Definitely seems like picking the team is the first step towards getting cosplay locked.
We don't talk about that. But yeah, we'll see.
And it sounds like you've been playing a little bit of the Rekka crew, but looking at the stats, they've been doing okay. They're definitely not overbearing by any sense of the imagination.
Yeah, I think I got like 10 games of them, and then I ended up actually winning Triad tournament that we had recently. It's like 30 people. It was me in first and actually another Rekkas player in second place. And for me, I think they're good. They're really good. It's just they're surprisingly fragile. And they are super weak to stun grenades. And any team that has any team that has like a PL modification on top of that. So like Void Dancer Troop, Legionary, which you're taking Slanesh, though I don't know if you'd probably take Slanesh. Any team that has stun grenades plus, so like Phobos is a super bad matchup in my opinion for that team, just because they can take 4 stun grenades. It's almost, you can go pretty heavy on the lethal 5 shooting. I do think somebody could like pilot them to potentially a golden ticket. It's just, I don't know if that is something I want to invest in, particularly because so much of their game plan is just like run at you and start generating those points. So their playstyle kind of necessitates you falling into the stun grenade trap. So like, it's a little, don't get me wrong, most fun I've ever had playing Kill Team. Rolling 6 dice is hilarious. I have had some absolutely amazing games where I have rolled so hot it's not even funny and generate so many Rekka points in a given interaction that it's comical. And that's exactly how they should play, right? But from like a competitive standpoint, their biggest strength to me is the fixing the dice. And I mean, they have some fairly reliable shooting if you get the ball rolling, and like surprisingly like just one shot anything in the game if you are like collecting those Rekka points in the right way. And using those bomb squigs in a very methodical way.
I'm telling you, man, I think Rekkas might be one of the best shooting teams in the game. Like with the equipment up to do piercing 1 and enough Rekka points, you can kill like 95% of models. Pretty much everything.
But Mark,
like
they hit on 5s.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the team that I played a lot in the last edition was Gellerpox, and so I played them a little bit this edition, and I find that when I'm going into like Legionary and Plague Marines hitting on 5s with Hulks feels really bad. So I've been kind of like playing a bunch of different things, pretty eclectic mix at this point. And at this point, I'm kind of settling into Felgor. I've been playing them for a couple weeks and really enjoying them. Pretty fun play style. And I've been trying to play some Plague Marines too, but I've been a long time stan of Horde teams and trying to find a way with them in the new edition.
Just play Inquisition. Just rack your brain over Inquisition, and you'll be fine.
I'm gonna need like 12 more wrinkles in my brain before I can start playing Inquisition. But I'd love to, maybe someday.
Okay, I do want to talk a little bit about Felgor. So you said you've been noodling around with that. Have you played against like the meta menaces much, or mostly playing against just kind of other random teams? How are they feeling right now?
I feel they're feeling pretty good. I haven't played against Legionary or Warp Coven, but they're doing pretty well in the sense, I mean, they can plant Beacon. You've got a lot of bodies to do that with. You've got Deploy that gives you an extra inch of movement to kind of get that clutch Beacon placement. Their melee's feeling pretty good. Obviously, like the breakpoint's kind of changing with some elite teams. It feels a little bit rough with them, but I'm having a lot of fun with them in the sense where I'm able to play that same sort of, I think George called it a proactive defensive play style. I don't quite remember, but like I'm kind of hanging around the mid board trying to react to my opponent more than making a bunch of really aggressive plays early on. and kind of doing the same thing I did with Gellerpox, where unless you come into my territory and stop me from doing my faction tack up, or in this case, planting the beacon, I'm just going to score a lot of points.
Yeah, Felgor do seem pretty fun. I mean, I've only done one game with them, and it was against Hyrtech Circle, and Hyrtech Circle is really, really rough for Felgor. But
yeah,
otherwise, like a lot of their nerfs having been rolled back, it looks like they're really, really strong. It just looks like they've got like some hard counters floating out there.
I think so. I think that they definitely do.
Yeah, for me, I mean, honestly, what will make my choice super easy for Cherokee is if we do get a slate between now and then, and they give me my scout body back, and then I will just go back to scouts. Because right now they are just in a rough position. Man, oh man, I played into Gellerpox the other week with scouts, and I was like, I should be pretty confident going into this match. You know, I got the 21 wounds, 5-up save, whatever. Double shooting shotgun, it should be fine. And then I realized I actually had to pick a tac op, and that's when that all fell apart. Because, you know, it's like, oh, well, I'll just take kill confirm against the Hulks. And then I was like, maybe not. Maybe we'll just do plant beacons. And then it's like, oh, yeah, I'm mostly 2 APL. And, you know, the sergeant really needs to be doing things other than planting beacons. I don't necessarily know if another body will solve their problems, to be honest. I think them losing their double bolter shooting kind of hurt a lot of their offensive output, particularly against elites.
First, you didn't just go the full distance of just trying to confirm kills and killing the Hulks. Like the Hulks are not nearly as dangerous in this edition as before. Oh
no, they're not. And honestly, that's what I probably should have done. Yeah. In that, but even then, it's like, let's expand that out. I mean, it's like, oh, we'll just take kill confirm until all like the elites. But even then, it's like.
I think against elites, it's like you can make a good argument against elites. It's probably a little bit harder, but Gellerpox right now, they will die to shotguns. Like two dudes shooting a Gellerpox Hulk will probably kill them with.
I like the idea of using like implant with a shotgun. I like that
because I think if you leave the Hulks alive, they kill you. So like,
oh no, I was saying against elites, like using the
against the elites, maybe you play around with it, but I think against the Hulks, because the 4 Hulks still do most of the work, even in this edition. Once they go down, the rest of the mutants are all pretty squishy. So playing scared and using your 2 APL, and this is kind of like building a game plan that works. Like seeing that stat block, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. It's like, well, you either choose to do it or you pick a plan where you're gonna. Spend your 2 APL operatives to try to score 1 point at a time when your opponent has a wall of meatheads that will kill you when you get close to them. So you're still giving them those points and not giving yourself an opening to go kill someone. Those are like the things where you look at a match and you're like, ooh, that looks a little bit spooky. But then if you make one of those choices, like finding a line, like a holistic game plan early on, and it's just the Hulks have to die. Whatever lets me kill the Hulks efficiently is probably where I should be going.
Yeah, like I said, I think all scouts needs that extra body. Honestly, the trip beacon becoming just seek across the board is such a powerful but small upgrade. Like, just allows you to just dominate basically the center of the board for the second turning point, allowing you to set up in ways that like other teams just can't. It would not shock me if it just the one body is what they need. I may be wrong, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think scouts getting back that body would be a huge upgrade for them, which would be nice. I think they could definitely use the help. They're definitely one of those teams that, for whatever reason, is languishing, and the GW has decided to make a massive change to this team. We don't quite know why.
I don't know.
We probably never will. Like, that's one of their decisions.
Yeah,
they've made it.
That's something I would like to see. Sometimes I think in like some like TCGs, like for like trading cards, like for example, like Magic will sometimes like, this is why this card is banned. This is why that. I would love to see like from the designer's perspective, like a designer's commentary, like they put in the new books now, but on like an overview of why they did these changes and what they're looking towards in the future. I think if they did something like that, like the opening that line of communication, I think people would complain a little less. Hopefully,
I think right now we're just in a weird spot. Like, we don't know. I'm assuming that they've seen all the changes, so there's got to have some plan. This just clearly hasn't been implemented yet. To be fair, if we look at Warcom as of this week, January 24th-ish, all they've been doing is spreading the good word of Asserman and the rest of the Eldari. So I'm sure that's got to be the priority for GW. And, as much as I love Kill Team, one of the most important things is that GW is a business, and 40K sells probably like 10 times more models than we ever will.
Certainly. I mean, but hey, if we're doing all the Asserman stuff, drop the Data Sleep, give Blades and Kane massive buffs. There you go. Synergy.
The new meta
I
menace,
hope they
Blades
don't
of
do stuff
Cain.
like that. Blades of Cain is already basically there, right? Their run in LVO was pretty impressive.
They were
Yes.
like really up there in win percentage too, like coming into LVO, weren't they?
They basically had one person carry them the whole
Yes.
weekend. They were like a 55% win rate the weekend of LVO, and it was just Chris as the only primary person with a good record. So for what it's worth, Blades, elves in general have looked like basically the plan if you want to be a sweaty player who wants to play against the elites. Those are your best bet right now, just because you get the power of strong melee, decent enough shooting, just as much APL as your opponent, and you can come up with game plans based on your opponent. Blades of Cain also get the benefit of having all the archetypes depending on how you want to skew your list. And Chris, the guy who went on the 8-0 run at LVO, did happen to also play Inquisition before this, so he's used to playing all the different archetypes.
Yeah, it's a good point. I know I had a little brief time with my Blades of Cain, and I remember talking with Chris through the Discords about like theory in the last edition and stuff like that. So I know this has like been one of his favorite teams, and he's really been practicing them and really wanted to like see how they perform. Shout out to Craft World BL Time, because I know he and I share that shared love of the most racist elves, the BL Time Craft World.
I'm actually playing against Blades of Cain tomorrow. We've got the League at Atomic Empire where we play every week. I am playing against them tomorrow, and a little bit excited. Obviously, they're fun. I think that Fulgor will be able to like slap them around, but a bunch of Howling Banshees are going to cause some problems for me for sure.
Just don't let them charge you. Just don't get charged. Don't
get shot. Don't get charged. Easy game.
Yeah, easy game if you just don't do things or don't let them happen. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people that like don't even believe in skewing all banshees. So if you run into someone that wants to play a balanced game, they're a loss. I don't know. It is pretty good to run a balanced game, but I me, I love my skews.
Yeah,
I definitely think that like Howling Banshees are the play into Felgor though, because lethal 5, making me hit on 4s in most cases as opposed to 3s seems like the right way to go.
Being able to stun them with the Shriek and be able to do it twice with a mono Banshee loadout particularly is quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, some Dire Avengers seem like a good take, but like maybe 2 or 3 of those and the rest Banshees.
Yeah, the Dyers are really nice because they can clean up frenzied models because you can give them the lethal 5 one, or just do Torn if it's into the dark. So they're nice to have in the back line, just clean up those howling and baying goatmen.
It'll be fine. Not going to get shot. George's words, just don't get shot.
Don't get shot.
I mean, those are the words that a lot of good players do. And one of the most important things, for listeners who are wondering, oh yeah, how do you not get shot? Make sure you're always touching terrain, because otherwise Jason will come out from behind and whisper into your opponent's ear, shoot him from behind at the obscure angle.
That's true. If you're like an eighth of an inch off of a piece of cover, people like me are totally going to get an angle on you.
Yeah, and for me particularly, I always think about you, Jason, in the dark, coming around and whispering about killing my models. Truly my nightmares.
He whispers to all the Phobos players from time to time on the Discords, using cursors, shoot them in the back.
Yes, you should run 5 infiltrators.
Yeah, my new thing now for Phobos is all infiltrators. But I mean, like, now that, because like all incursors didn't really survive into the new edition, but all of the lessons that I learned from it totally did. Like, I played against Phobos with my Angels of Death, and I brought all pistols, and I was still just like, oh, I know your angles and my angles. All I need to do is set up like shots and angles that are a pain in the butt for you, and just like, I don't know, drown you in Auspex shots.
Yeah, I will say I tried out your comp with just running and screaming with pistols against a extraction. I was shocked how effective it was. Like, just stay in cover, saving on crits with 5s, and I mean, even their sniper, even though I will say he had quite a good roll. I think he rolled 2 crits naturally with the extraction sniper, which was not good for me. Even then, I just steamrolled his guys. Like, it was crazy. Like, this shouldn't work. Why is this working?
And it's been working all along. Like, it never didn't work. Like, last edition, the way to play Angels of Death was just like full sprint down the field. Just stage for double kills, and like usually people only have one or two things that can like kill a Marine easily, and if they do massive damage and you get a double kill with that Marine anyways before it dies, it doesn't matter. And like the same concept applies, and the only thing that like stops you in your tracks is Legionary, because they just do everything that Angels do but better. But I took a little bit of realizing to come back around to it, but in the new edition, it's pretty much the same thing. So you just need a new plan against Legionary, and against everyone else, you can just run down the field, and then there's like a 30% chance that the opponent will just run and hide because they're like, I don't know what to do. What are you doing? Like, you can't just have 6 Marines with an engage order. And then like people are scared of being counteract shot, which is silly. If someone does do this to you, just run out and shoot them, and it's fine. And if you run away, they're going to chase you down and double kill you. And if you missile into them, you're going to have a closer game.
And there's some good tricks for like how you line these sorts of plays up into your opponents, right, Jason? Because I know that I've seen you do a couple silly things to get into range to hit your opponents these ways. So like dropping smokes at the midline so that your operatives are not stuck on the back line. So for example, if you imagine a piece of Volcus terrain, it's about like an 8-inch box, you know? If you want to be able to charge your opponent at the opening of turn 2, you can't just sit on the opposite side of the 8-inch box unless you're Rekkas and you've punched a hole in a wall. So you've got to send an operative into the midline behind something with a smoke grenade, right?
But like you want the path of least resistance. So you don't want any cover between you and the enemy. If you can get an obscured angle, that's ideal. And it's really just, it comes down to if you do stage 6 models for double kills, you can lose a couple along the way. And then if like 3 Space Marines hit the enemy lines and are just start ripping up double kills and going crazy, like you don't even need cover. Smoke is helpful, especially for Phobos, but like it's not super necessary. And if you could be obscured by regular terrain on the way in, I think it will work pretty well. And there's actually 2 other factions that I'm looking at for doing something similar. One of them is Legionary, and I'm building a box of Khorne Berserkers. It's going to be all Chainsword Warriors with an icon and a Chainsword Leader. And the Chainsword Leader, as an aspiring, because this is just like a breath of fresh air, there's no way that this way to play is going to be nerfed. You've got the severe rending chainsword that's 5/6. You strike on death. When you kill someone, you get an extra APL. So you can still charge, double fight, and shoot your rending pistol, and it's still insane. Other than that, you've got your Chainsword Warriors. No, it's all going to be Khorne. Yeah, so, well, Khorne for the leader, because the 5/6 rending chainsword is pretty bananas. And you still have a rending pistol, and then you could start like 3 Chainsword Warriors as Slaanesh, so you got the extra inch. Then you full sprint down the board and you pop smoke on yourself because you don't need the blades. And then if they get close enough to shoot you, you're still -1 to hit. And if they don't, then you're still staged even more aggressively. And then the next turn, you just flip to whatever chaos mark you want. You can stay with Slaanesh if you want. You can switch to Khorne if you want the extra damage. You can switch to Tzeentch if you want to move, dash, double shoot. And you just like go absolutely crazy. And I think the nerf, it's such a different way to play that whatever the balanced data slate does, there's going to be a version of this that still works.
I had a theory when this team first came, like when we first saw the Legionnaire rules. I don't know if you remember, Mark Meyer, what I said, but the thing that stuck out to me was the blades that everybody can get, right? When you Khorne mark them. So the fact you can give everybody a chainsword if they're Khorne marked, so basically 4, 5 attacks hitting on 3s, and then also have them be really good at shooting if you like just give them a plasma gun or a melta gun or whatever weapon, and just have them be hyper flexible and be like, I can do everything, right? And I was just like, I almost tried it out, but like I moved away from it when everyone realized that like how just cracked it is. But now that I hear you talking about it, I might try some version of that now, to be honest, because it sounds insane. And actually, one of our resident Legionnaire players, Mark French, who does our statistics show, if you guys listen to us over at Vox Scream, he did that. He ran basically Khorne comp the entire league and did very well with them. I think he only lost once. So there's definitely some level of merit to your theory. Like, I don't think he never didn't run the Butcher, which is insane. So dumb. Yeah, such a dumb model.
I think I've got vibe-wise, I love the Butcher. I think he's actually not horrible in a lot of matchups.
I mean, he was swallowing Ratlings whole when I was playing Mark French.
Well, I mean, they're on 6
like
foods,
his daily
man.
vitamins.
Yes.
That's true. The Ratlings are quite squishy, and corn is definitely a choice that I would look at very seriously when playing against them.
Yeah, because any chainsword warrior, you're severe and +1 damage, so you're just going to wheel up with your 6 damage auto crits, and you just kill every single one in one hit, no matter what. It's like, oh no, I got 1 hit and 4 misses, killed you anyways.
Yeah.
Ratlings is interesting, man. Mark Meyer, you were playing them a little bit, and I was kind of looking at the rules because somebody just commissioned me to paint their Ratlings, and while I was painting, I was just looking at the rules, and I'm just like, I feel like these guys are super strong on paper, and I don't know if we're going to see somebody tap into that potentially, because it just seems like with being backed by those 3 super tough Ogrins and that super solid shooting from everyone else just seems really good. But the only thing that I think in the reason they may not have the juice is that you need somebody to do objectives, and that means you're putting a Ratling near your enemies, which means that's probably a dead Ratling. And you don't want to be losing those guys.
We also ran into like a weird sort of trick, or not even a trick. We ran into a ruled as written, ruled as intended issue with Ratlings on Volcus terrain. So obviously they've got their sniper position ploy that gives everybody silent if they've got heavy terrain within their control range. Well, we realized that if you have a sniper on one of the small ruins, obviously like those little teeth at the top are light terrain, and the vantage point directly under you is light terrain, and you can't really see over it because you're short. So since you cannot see the heavy terrain, is it in your control range? I think everybody would say that it's foolish for a Ratling sniper to not be able to shoot from conceal using their ploy on a small ruin. But, it's one of those technically correct kind of situations, and I think that needs to be ironed out a little bit. But I think the team's a lot of fun. I mean, I had some pretty good success with them. It works pretty well for like the way I like to hang back. And I think this team's just a monster on Into the Dark, dude. You just run up with your Ogrins, hide them behind doors, just like you would with a Gellerpox Hulk. And you can make sniper positions with a barricade pretty much against any wall you want and just take silent shots. It's a lot of fun. I love the big shot, too.
You can see your opponent for real, which is never a given for that team.
It's one of those things where I feel like it's a pretty straightforward team. Like they have a lot of fun rules, but they don't have like a lot of gotchas,
Oh man, I super
larceny
disagree.
is probably their biggest gotcha, just doing a mission action on a point you don't control.
I think they're like turbo, just like gotcha the team. I think they're like the most gotcha team in the game, maybe, because like the dog is like some utter insanity where if you can set it up perfectly so that you have a completely unbreakable approach. Where if you stage someone that is like they're not within enemy charge range, then an enemy would have to move dash to get there, and then you stage someone a Ratling there, and then the dog within 6 inches. If they run up and then like they move dash to try to get there, you just like dash away with the dog's warning. And then with all your mines and tripwires and stuff, you can set up an unbreachable flank on the other side. That's like some crazy shenanigans that's going to trick people. You can use Scarper to get crazy angles on people that think people aren't expecting. So they do something, they think they're safe, use Scarper, and then you like do another move and throw a grenade at someone. Like they have so many tricks that are so like sneaky. I think
really
they
liked
absolutely
that
have
episode
some
y'all did a couple weeks
sauce.
ago was really, really cool on Ratlings. You were talking about kind of the same thing you just were about how you can use the dog and the mines to create non-reciprocal charges, which is such a rare thing for teams these days that aren't elves. And it's not a strategy I've gotten to try out yet because I've just been scatterbrained and playing so many different teams. But I really want to try that out because it sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, they seem like an insanely good team. And if someone had a bunch of reps, I think they could pull a Chris Baki and go undefeated at a major tournament for a big chunk. Like they're so full of tricks. They have like, and the tools, then the way you can set it up, you definitely. It's not easy, but it is possible to set it up where the opponent has absolutely no answers. And there's not a lot of teams in the game that have the tools and the combos to squeeze your opponent into a place where they have no answers like that.
I think the nice thing about it, though, is like when you compare it to a team like Blades, I think we're going to kind of get into a little bit of this here, where it's not like Blades, where one of Blades' strength is just they have so many rules that it's hard for a lot of people to keep track of them. Like, Rattlings, like if I was playing a game with Joe, for example, and it was his first time playing Rattlings, I would, tell him about my stuff like, okay, well, as a strap ploy, I can get silent shots with all my rifles, watch out for my firefight ploy that lets me do mission actions on points that I don't control. Those sorts of things, I list them all out, but just, if you're playing the well-balanced team with Aspect Warriors, it's just so hard to know and remember all these things. Like, I was looking at all this stuff, getting ready for my game with them against them with Felgor tomorrow, and it's overwhelming.
A team with a million options. Luckily, a lot of the Blades of Cain options can be rolled down into whatever the constituent rules are. So, like, move or like shoot while moving, torrent, but only for one other person, ignore injury, ignore APL modifier.
I'm not going to have to worry about like their super conceal ploy with
and you can basically say like one of the good things that is useful at tournament play is trying to figure out where your opponent may or may not have information. So for something like Blades of Cain, when you get to the table, you're like, hey, I'm going to play Blades of Cain. How much information do you want? A lot, a little, or like a lot, a medium amount, or all the information. And then if they say all the information, you rattle off as much as possible. But then the other level would be, well, these Striking Scorpions, they're kind of sneaky. Howling Banshees, more in your face melee, and then Dire Avengers sit in the back and go shoot stuff. They have stuff, that have a couple tricks. I can do a little torrent, I can do a couple other things. And if your opponent asks, you're basically trying to poke at your opponent's brain to see what information they want. And if they say nothing, it's not your responsibility to tell them your entire team.
Absolutely.
Especially at tournaments. Like at tournaments, as much as I would like it to be a perfect environment where everyone always helps your opponent, there does need to be a layer where there have to be consequences. Not necessarily that you get punished and you feel like you have a bad time, but you have to be able to ask the right questions in tournament play.
Agreed. One of the first questions I ask when sitting at the table across my opponent, especially like with Rekkas particularly because they were so new, is like, have you played against Rekkas before? And I have like my spiel down to like the key gotchas. And I also try to point out like particular like interactions that my opponent may not like think of regarding like their team that they're playing. Particularly I can think of when I was in the Triad tournament that we did recently. I was playing against Plague Marine player, and I was like, hey, I know you contagion is, you're going to be reducing my melee, but just something to keep in mind, if I have Rekka points, it doesn't necessarily matter that I hit on 4s. So like keep that in mind when you're charging in melee, because I don't want you to like run into melee, think you're going to get a kill, and then I get no hits, and all of a sudden I have 3 hits. You know what I mean?
The obvious one for any of the orc teams is like, don't forget, I have a rosary, just a scratch. Whatever version of ignore 1 normal damage, which is a common rule now. It's found on Blaze of Cain, on Veteran Guard, rip Veteran Guard. No one cares. Except for Dakota. I'm sorry, Dakota, if you're listening to this. It's a pretty common rule. It shows up everywhere. All the orc teams have it, and it is just kind of a thing. So make sure that you try to cover the main gotchas, but you don't necessarily have to tell your opponent that, power swords are scary. Like at this point, if you're going to a tournament, your opponent should ask questions.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah. And like, so if I'm going to a tournament and I run into a team that I haven't played, I'm not just going to be like, I'm going to set my expectations. Like, I've never played this team. Like, something weird is going to happen. I don't want my opponent to sit there and explain their team to me for like 100 million years. I'm going to be like, if you have like the biggest thing to explain to me, that's cool. Otherwise, like, I'll learn a cool trick by watching you play. And like, I don't have to win every game. And like, if it's a team I've never played, it's good to set your expectations. And like, every time I've just gone to a tournament to have fun, and like I didn't really have expectations about winning or losing games, those were always the most fun events overwhelmingly. And then those are also the ones that I've done the best at, just kind of like showing up, trying to have a good, clean, fun game, not like pressuring yourself too much about anything. And then that also helps to stay fun and be fun for the opponent. And like if you've never played a team and something surprises you, like don't take it personally. Just be like, wow, that was a cool play. And know about it for next time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things about our particular community over in the Triangle is we have such a large league and we have such a wide variety of teams. there's a good chance you're going to run into like literally every team in the game just from the sheer amount of people we play over a 10-game league. It is very rare nowadays where I sit at a table and I go, I have no idea how the team across the table works, just because I get so many games in or weekly now just from doing the league, and then whatever I can get on the weekend if I have that time. So the more you play, the more you're going to learn and understand too. So, that's just about being prepared too, in terms of like general tournament play and like understanding the interactions between your team and other teams, and kind of planning for those eventualities in those situations.
I 100% agree with you, Joe. I will say I'm glad we're having this conversation, because the idea of kind of level setting with your opponent and trying to kind of gauge where they're at is something that I hadn't really considered before. Like I mentioned, I was playing a lot of Gellerpox in the last edition, and a lot of people in our local scene weren't really playing it. So I obviously want, for a game where I'm learning this team and my opponent's playing against them for what's probably the first time, I want them to be well informed. Oftentimes it ended up feeling like I was just kind of word vomiting my rules. And I think with a team like Gellerpox that has a lot of rules and very dense data cards, it's almost like overwhelming. I think it can be, like I had mentioned maybe that the glitchlings had super conceal, but that's the thing they forget when I end up spending, 10 minutes talking about what each Hulk does. So I think that's a really good way to approach it, just to kind of figure out what it is they want to know.
Yeah, that's always why I try to go with a little information, medium amounts of information, all the information. But all the information, that one I fully expect that no one ever hears. The thing that I repeat to people at the beginning of that is like, don't worry, I will repeat this one more time when it becomes relevant, and that'll be all you get. So I will word vomit the whole thing because it's not that hard, but I only give people one warning, and I'll give it to them in like the beginning of the turn, not like when it becomes temporally relevant, unfortunately, because unless they ask, because they remembered that I have said the words like 3 times, I'm not going to remind them when it is the most important thing. Like, if they've made the mistake and I picked up my dice and they're like, "Ooh, can I take that back?" I'm like, well, if it's, if we spent the last 10 minutes waiting for you to make a decision, maybe this is the one. This is the moment where I'm going to say, I want to finish this choice. Because at tournament play, there's always got to be a balance. And, some people, the most important thing to realize in tournament play and competitive games in general, having been a Magic the Gathering player, played a lot of FNMs, played a lot of random people, not everybody takes losses the same way. Some people, it's just, you need to take a step back and just let them have the loss and let them fume out for a little bit, and then they'll be fine. Maybe they'll walk away from the table and have no interest in talking. That's fine. That's part of, unfortunately, competitive games, especially as Kill Team gets to be a larger and larger place. We can try our best to set examples and be nice and make sure that everybody has a good time. But winning and losing is hard. Not everyone who loses and not everyone that wins is going to have a good time.
Yeah, I think important thing to remember is, if you think you are immune to the tilt, you've not truly been crushed before. I think something I usually tell people is like, even the most sportsman-like players can find themselves in a very tilting situation. So, you are not immune to tilt is what I would say to people.
Yeah, 100%. When I was at Nova, I played in the team tournament. Joe, you were on my team, and we played against our, locals. We played against Mark French, George, our co-caster on the pod, and I was just upset already. I was like, I'm a night person. I was upset that I was awake at 9 a.m. and playing George. I could have slept in and stayed home to play George. And he brought Exaction Squad, which is a team that I wasn't very familiar with and plays pretty well in the Gellerpox. And I was salty, dude. I was having such a bad time. And, at the end of the day, I was so salty that at the end of it, I was like, what am I doing here? This is like my friend. I see him all the time. It's just, it's no way for me to treat my friend. And I think that that's something that seems really, really universal amongst all the people that I've met who play Kill Team, is that I think we all really, really value the community aspect of the game. Any of us could stay at home and play competitive video games and never have to talk to anybody ever. But I think we all like spending this time with other people, and it's important to treat other people with respect. But, you have to have those kinds of experiences where you behave in a way that maybe doesn't align with your values, or maybe that upsets people that you care about, to really understand that you have to change how you behave, right?
Yeah, and I think particularly the person I always think of when it comes to this stuff is Mr. Garrett, Mark Garrett. When I always have a fantastic time playing him, and I just talking with him and just like going through the game and like the whole experience I have with him every time I've played him has been super great. And I always like have that idea in my head of like how a competitive game should be between two respected opponents. And obviously people like you had said is it sometimes people just need to walk away from the table and not be around. But a level of like graciousness that comes from just respecting your opponent, and even just like George particularly is really good at this, just complimenting when you do cool things. Like I remember we recorded from the LVO recap, he got Hyrotech teleported directly into his drop zone basically and lost, I think he said 2 Marines like almost right off the bat. And I said during that, just like I don't know how I would get out of that funk, especially in this edition where like TP1 like stuff like that rarely happens nowadays. So like having that level to be like, you just did some cool stuff, but I'm totally wrecked for it, is a level that I'm trying to build to. I really am.
Yeah, that is one thing that I definitely was trying to keep an eye out for. I mean, like LVO really is like a big high pressure event. I had some people hit me with some pretty gnarly tricks. Had some just crazy dice spikes, and I would like to think I stayed pretty positive through it. Like definitely some of them were really, like I did pretty well there. Where I played against a Corsairs guy that did some teleporting shenanigans and had a pistolier kill my leader in the first turning point, and I was like, wow, that was one of the coolest plays I've seen of the whole event, which was really cool. And the Blades of Cain guy that I lost to actually did some Scorpion shenanigans where a Scorpion just 1v1 dueled and killed a whole captain with like, he shot and then he moved within an inch and slashed me and then moved around the corner and did a hatchway fight, which was quite a crazy combo. So it was just like, he did like 10 damage before he even swung and then would just kill me in one hit. I was like, yeah, cool plays. Like taking a moment to just like, to when someone does something cool, instead of being surprised and tilted about it, like calling it out, I think is an incredibly good skill, just like you were just saying, Joe. But it really is to be, it's easier to get tilted than I ever would have expected, because I've been pretty like level-headed through a lot of things, but I had my first ever like become tilted at LVO where I was playing, this was my round 8 opponent. We were very like meticulous in measuring things, declaring things, doing everything. I had like one shot that was left for the turn, and it was Assault Intercessor was going to walk around the corner. I flipped a Devastator Doctrine. I was going to pop the Auspex and shoot his leader that was standing in smoke. And I was like holding the card, but I never said it. And I rolled the dice, and then he was like, hey, you didn't use the Auspex. Like, you don't have any crits and you discard a hit. And then I was like, what do you mean I didn't use the Auspex? And like, to me, I was like, so, like in my heart, I knew that I did. So when he called it out, it felt like he was yanking it away. And like, I was like, okay, so if I didn't actually say it and I call a judge, then I would, just have made a fool out of myself more. So that was like the most tilted I've ever been in a kill team game. It was round 8, it was like, it was kind of tense with all the measuring and all that. And so pretty much I just had decided that I was going to drink some water and walk around, and, everything's fine. It is just a game. We're there to have fun. And like after the game, I was like, the thing I want more than anything is to be a good sport and have fun. And we've kind of been chatting on Discord a little bit ever since. And I would like to say that we're friends. He's a great dude.
Yeah, man.
Nice little bow to that story.
Great. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
But, one of those things is realizing as a competitive player, taking a beat is not necessarily a bad thing. You don't always have to be at maximum spice levels just because something happens.
Yeah.
You're playing a dice game. You're not there to roll dice and be like, oh, I just guaranteed kill you. That's just not how dice games work, You play Magic the Gathering, you play limited specifically, you need to draw not a land out of the top 20 cards, and you've drawn your 15th out of 17 lands. It happens, man. It's statistically improbable, but It does happen. And that is part of the reason why you're playing these games. If you can't handle the fluctuations of like, oh, I went in with the Space Marine with 5 attacks and 2 rerolls and I missed 7 dice. Sick. I lose this game. That is part of the tournament experience. If you cannot play those games, sit in that moment and be like, I did everything I could and I still made the wrong, and like, it turned out it was the wrong choice, but not because of anything I had control over. You need to be able to let go of the control of those moments because you had no control there. You know, you did what you could. And if you spice out or salt out over your opponent, all that's showing is who you are, which could be a good or bad thing. You know, maybe you just have to do that growing in public.
I mean, I remember ATC from last year, like I mentioned. I was on Felgor, which was easily one of the best teams, and my opponent was playing Cultist. So the sweatiest matchup you could have in that tournament was between me and this guy. And to give you kind of a point of reference, this guy, one of the fun little quirks of last edition that people would do, and I guess it could still even theoretically do now, but just something I noticed people did last edition, is like right before a big tournament, people will put in like a dumb compendium team to like trick people that that's the team that they were running. And I remember this person had Tomb World in there, and I remember the people I went with, Scott, who I play with quite frequently in our local community. He's like, he hasn't submitted his roster, and he's not taking high, or the Tomb World was the original compendium name. And I remember last minute, I think it was like literally like 11:50 or something, he switched to Cultists. And we joked about it, like, oh, you know, he's just being sweaty about it. And I ended up playing him. And come to find out, yes, he is an incredibly sweaty player who was not very responsive when I asked him questions, was not generally a very friendly guy. And I mean, I don't know if you can tell anything about me. I'm a pretty boisterous, over-the-top individual. So I'm trying to make jokes, you know, kind of, you know, whatever with him, kind of interact with him. And he just was not biting. And I'm like, okay. And I kind of receded back and I made sure I explained things and went over things multiple times. And I remember a particular play. I had told him multiple times, be careful with the maul, because if I get into range, I can do a lot of damage on your cultist models and just like take them out of nowhere. And I remember he set up like 3 dudes and I was like within an inch control range of all of them. And I was like, well, I'm going to go do the play. And I went in there, did the maul sweep. I think I took out a bunch of models, and I was just sitting there, and we just both sat there silently. And I was just like, in all fairness, man, I told you multiple times, and I apologize, but just like, you know, yeah. And that's just how that game ended, and I ended up winning that game. But you know, to a certain extent, there is only so much you can do. Just try to be gracious, try to help your opponent, even if they're not helpful back. You're not always going to get the best response, and there's nothing you can do about it other than just lead into, you know, doing what you're always going to do. Just don't be a dick.
Your only responsibility as a player when you go to a tournament is to be the best person that you can be. Your opponents can be whatever they want to be. The other content creators, you know, could be whatever we want to be. You know, everyone is whoever they want to be, but all you're competing against is the person that walked into the room. Just don't be a worse person than that person that wanted to be a competitor and walked into a tournament, you know? And that's really all there is to it. If you spend the time salting out publicly, it's just you that looks like the fool. No one else is there to care about you looking like a crazy person. So there's no reason to be that person. And, you know, it's all part of the journey for everybody. You know, I've played a lot of players. You know, Kill Team has less of it, I think, which is nice. But Magic the Gathering, you know, you go to your local FNM, you beat a dude pretty handily, 2-0 sweep, the light goes out in their eyes, and they're just like, they just walk away, and you're like, cool. I'll never talk to this guy again outside of the next time I play him, but there's nothing I can do about that. Like, people are...
That was my experience when I played competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Too. I used to play competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!
People will have whatever reactions they want to have. It is not your responsibility to baby those people on their reactions.
No,
the best you can
certainly
do
not.
is try your best.
Well, do y'all have any sort of like heuristics that you use to kind of help keep that perspective when you're in these competitive environments? Like myself, I always will come back to I'm an adult playing with toys with other adults playing with toys to kind of keep things in perspective. And I also will sometimes think about how much luck goes into any tournament run, right? You know, obviously you can say the dice are going to be the dice, but how the bracket shakes out is a luck thing sometimes. You know, who your opponent is, again, like what type of person are they going to be? Are they going to be forthcoming with information? Are they going to be, you know, rude? Are they going to be just a ton of fun to play against? You never know these things. So, you know, sometimes you just got to, you know, go with the punches, roll the dice, see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, for
treat everybody
me,
as
like,
their own person, and then let them reveal what they want out of the interactions and go from there. But yeah, Jason, what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and like the number one thing I try to remember whenever I go to a tournament is like I'm here to make friends. And like at the beginning of LVO, Dakota had a big speech that was like you're here to play games with this game that you love with all these people like that came from all over the place that also love this game. Like we all immediately have like we're all humans and we all immediately have something in common. Like we should be friends. Remember, it's a human on the other side of the table, and like. Yeah, so just going in with that mindset and just like trying to be friends with everyone, and it's like I want to have good, clean games, and I want to win as a competitive player, but like making friends is more important.
Agreed. I made a lifelong friend in Mark Meyer doing this podcast and playing this game. I made a lifelong friend in George, and I never thought I'd be doing a podcast doing it. So, small miracles.
I like a lot of people really love playing video games and have done that for a large part of my adult life. But then when I made a career change to a job, for those who don't know, I actually edit podcasts full time. And so when I got a job where all of a sudden I'm looking at the computer all day, I wanted to find something where I could, play games, not at the computer, and make friends. And I found all of that in Kill Team. And the making friends is one of the important parts.
He's quite good at editing podcasts.
I'm okay. I edit some really boring podcasts for work, but that's a conversation for another time. Do y'all like venture capital startup chat? So we can talk about some of that.
Such a hot market right now.
It's so bad.
It's doing good right now. As long as there are 2 letters in it. Alrighty, well, I feel like we've gotten for a good spread of topics today, all the way back from, Rekkas, breaking holes in walls, talking about LVO, talking about sportsmanship. One shout out on last week's Rekka episode for anyone who's made it to this point in the podcast. I made a small boo-boo when talking about the Bomb Squig's ability to blow themselves up to farm Rekka points. You can definitely do it, and there is probably some weird shenanigans where you can sit around and farm the points. It's probably not the best idea because those activations probably seem useful, but for everyone who commented, here's your shout out.
I saw that talk and I was like, wait, I've been doing that the whole time. What do you mean?
It happened like 3 different times. So, I was wrong. It happens all the time. Everyone in my local scene knows, every once in a while Travis is wrong, which is totally fine. We had the Cherokee Open shout out. It's coming up in May? February?
February,
very soon. So,
weeks out.
For anyone in the Triangle area who's a regular listener, I'm sure you guys already know. And for anyone just a little bit further than that, now's the time to get tickets.
If you're on the East Coast, come. It's going to be a fun on a bun.
Come hang out with us. Come meet us. Love to meet you.
And you might see me painted green.
Strong sell.
And as usual, listeners, thank you for listening until the end.